Right, that's us at 10 o'clock, so I think we'll get started. So thank you very much everybody for joining us this morning for the Power Automate event. Just a few quick notes before we get started. So the session is being recorded this morning and we will be sending a copy of the recording and the slides out later on. So if you do want to catch up or you know there's anything you missed, you can do that later. Also, just to make you aware that you are on mute at the moment, so if you do have any questions, we do encourage you to use the chat functionality. We do have our consultant Sammy on hand to answer any questions throughout the session and near the end as well. So yeah, I think that's everything. So I'm going to hand over to Graham, who'll be leading the session this morning. So thank you very much for joining us and we hope you enjoy. Thank you.
Thanks, Sopash. Morning, everyone. Hope you're having a good morning. My name's Graham McLean, so I head up the SharePoint and Microsoft 365 practice for Bridgeall. And today's session is about boosting productivity with Power Automate. So, you know, quite a lot of people are using Microsoft 365 these days. They haven't really thought about, you know, they're using the kind of bare minimum. Got documents on it, using it for email, and starting to look about, you know, what else can it do, what other features can we use. So this session is just going to expand on that ability to kind of boost your organization's productivity through the use of automation, making use of Power Automate to automate any repetitive tasks or just help kind of standardize processes or reduce the time spent, you know, carrying out tasks. So the agenda for today, we've just got a wee bit of an introduction about Bridgeall, you know, who we are, what we do. We've got an overview of Power Automate and the different elements of Power Automate. We've got an introduction to robotic process automation, or RPA. So again, just a wee bit about how it works and how you could potentially apply it within your organisation. And then we'll be looking at a couple of new features within Power Automate. So we'll be looking at Power Automate Desktop, and we'll be looking at the Process Advisor as well. And as Zopash mentioned just at the start of the call, one of my team, Sammy, is going to be on the chat. So if you have any questions as we go through, if you can put them onto the chat, and he'll do his best to answer them. And then we'll try and get a wee kind of Q&A session at the end as well to mop up any answers. Okay, so Bridgeall, based in Glasgow, 33 staff at the moment, but trying to recruit some other people at the moment. Established in 2002, and really we focus on three separate aspects. So we've got the modern intelligent workplace, so everything encompassing, you know, Microsoft 365, Windows 10. We've got managed IT services and support, including the Azure cloud in that as well. And then we've got some IP in terms of our Smart Crowds product, which is specific for innovation, and our Trevi product, which is specific for the water industry. So what we really try and do is we try and become a kind of trusted advisor to our customers. So we try and get in and get long-term relationships with our customers and advise them of the new technology that's coming up, as we are tending to be working with the more cutting edge side of the technology, so we can see what's coming down the line and what could be useful for organisations. We're a 9 times Microsoft Gold partner, and we're also a Microsoft Content Services Group preferred partner. So we're one of 26 worldwide partners that work directly with Microsoft, looking specifically at some of the new technologies that are coming down in the area of content services. So things like Microsoft Viva, which some of you may have heard of, and SharePoint Syntex as well. And we're also ISO 9001 and 27001 certified, and Cyber Essentials Plus. Okay, we have a variety of different customers across the private and the public sector, across a number of different industry verticals, such as manufacturing, housing, national government, NHS, etc. Okay, so done the introduction bit. Now onto Power Automate. So Power Automate it kind of sits at the centre of the Microsoft 365 platform, and provides what I would say is kind of enterprise-grade workflow and orchestration solutions out to the rest of the platform and beyond. So, as you would expect, it's got excellent integration with the full Microsoft 365 platform of applications, but it also contains a huge number of custom connectors to third-party systems, quite a lot of kind of cloud-based systems, and quite a lot of just other third-party systems as well. So it's not just restricted to Microsoft systems in terms of connecting. We also have web API connectors. So if there isn't a specific connector there, then there is a connector to a web API. So if you have a system that has web APIs available, then it's possible to create a connector and talk to that system as well. There's also an ability to create your own custom connectors. So if you have a specific need and you think you're going to reuse that connector quite a lot, then potentially instead of using the web API connector, you may create your own custom connector to use that time and time again in multiple different flows. So really, Power Automate targeted towards power users who have a need to automate business processes, but also targeted towards IT and being able to do wider kind of business processes, or for power users to be able to start that process and then extend out to IT if they need custom connectors built, or some assistance there as well. So similar to if you're familiar with the rest of the kind of Power platform, if you like, it's similar to that. Kind of power users can do the majority of the work, but you may need your IT department to kind of chip in and do some of the the web API or specific connectors. So it can be used standalone to automate different parts of a solution or a process, but frequently it'll be used with what I mentioned, the rest of the kind of Power platform, if you like. So used with Power Apps to give a kind of front end user interface to the process, or used with SharePoint to store content, file content or list content, or used with Outlook to pick up on emails and automate some email scenarios as well. And through doing that, you can really automate a full kind of end-to-end business process, and we'll hopefully see some of that later on as well. So in terms of the types of Power Automate flows that are there are three different kind of main types, if you like, and they are kind of distinguished by the triggers that kind of kick them off. So the first one is an automated flow. So that type of flow is triggered by an action happening. So there's a large number of triggers that can be used, but typically something like an email being received into an email inbox, a Microsoft form being submitted by somebody, or an item being added to a SharePoint list. So the triggers can also involve third-party systems. So things like when a new tweet is posted on Twitter, so on a specific Twitter account, you can pick that up and you can get Flow to do something. Or when an item is created in a table in SQL Server. You've then got scheduled flows. So as the name kind of suggests, those flows run at a predefined time. So for an example, every hour, every weekday, every month, and they're carrying out an activity that you want to do periodically that maybe you had to go in and do manually at the moment. And then the last one is instant flow. So these can be run from the desktop, but instant flows work particularly well with the mobile application. So there's a Power Automate mobile application, and the instant flows work pretty well from that. So the idea is that you're starting the automation with the click of a button. And if you're on mobile, then you've got the ability to kind of capture some of this key data. So things like location and time, when these events are triggered. So you could see a scenario for maybe kind of frontline workers if they had to check in somewhere when they arrived. You could have a flow that they just press the button on their app, and then that checks in, and effectively they say, I've arrived at the location, and it passes that location data into the flow as well. and you can record that the location they said they were at is actually where their kind of GPS says they are, off according to their mobile phone. So I've got a quick demo just to cover those 3 different scenarios and have a look at some of the flows there as well. So we'll just go through, have a look at the automated flow first of all. So what we've got here is just the kind of the index page, if you like, for the flow. So what we can see is some details about, you know, what happens to the flow, what it does, when it was created, what connections it's using and who its owners are, and then what the run history was as well. So if we go in and edit this flow, we can see what we're doing here is we're looking for an item being created in SharePoint. And then what we're going to do is we're going to start an approval process. And then the end condition really is, depending on the approval or the rejection of the approval process, we're going to create a channel within a Microsoft team. So if we just get the SharePoint site there. So we've got a SharePoint list here with our Teams channel request. And what we would do is just add a new item into here. And just save that. And then that's the new item added into the list. And what will happen is that will trigger this flow. So we'll start to see it appear in here. And then what will happen is we should get an email once the flow runs. So an email will drop in there with the approval and reject. And then what we're looking to happen is it should add this channel into here if we accept this. So we can see that it's running there. So it started 4 seconds ago and it's just running just now. And hopefully we should see in a wee second that we get an email dropped into the inbox. So there we go. So then we go into the email and we've got the approval rejection. So want to create a channel called automate event. I can choose whether to approve that or reject that. So we've got it approved. We'll just confirm that approval. And if we look at the run history, we can see that succeeded. So if we go into here now, we can see in the project planning team, we now have one hidden channel. If we look at the hidden channel, we've got this new automate event. So the kind of scenario for that one would be that, you know, you don't want to give everybody access to create new channels within Teams, but people need the ability to make a request to be able to do that. So you could give them a SharePoint list or some other form that they can fill out to request a channel, and then you can take that through an approval process and get the Power Automate to effectively do the work to create that channel, and all the person has to do is just decide whether that's, you know, a valid request or not. They don't need to worry about what's behind it, and they don't need to go and do anything to create the channel. The other good benefit you're going to get out of that is you've got a consistent approach to either, you know, creating channels or creating teams. Okay, so that's an automated one. So you saw how that was triggered based off of me adding an item into a list. We've then got a scheduled one here. So we've got weekly event list. And again, the same kind of index page, the connections, how it's ran in the past. If we go in and have a look at this, we can see that it starts with a recurrence. So if we look at the details there, we're saying that we want that to recur every week. And effectively what that's doing is this flow is targeted at my calendar within Outlook. And what it's doing is it's going round and it's looking every week at my calendar to see what events are there and to kind of wrap them up into one kind of summary email. So if we go and look at my email, we should see one that I'd ran previously in here where it's created a table and we've got the Power Automate event in there with the start and the end time, and that was in my calendar for today there as well. So when I ran that, obviously it's run every week, but when I ran that last week, that's what it had produced for me. Okay, so that's an example of a scheduled flow. And then the last one we've got is an instant flow. Now, as I said, you can run them from mobile. They're really good from mobile. The others can be seen and kind of interacted with from mobile as well. But this create new Outlook task one, because it's an instant flow, we'd need to just run it. And then what happens is we get asked to provide some properties in here. So we'd provide a task and a task description and then set a due date. And then what that would do is that would create a new Outlook task for us within Outlook. So that's a good example of just being able to add a task straight away. So that kind of covers the three main ways that you can trigger a flow. Okay, so now we're going to move on to how we look at some of the things that are new in Power Automate. So we're going to be looking at Robotic Process Automation, or RPA. We're also going to be looking at the Power Automate desktop, and we're looking at the Process Advisor as well. So what is Robotic Process Automation? So probably quite a lot of you have heard the term before, but effectively what you're doing is using software to perform tasks that would normally be carried out by humans. So the tasks that this makes sense to use, they normally kind of adhere to a set of rules. They're typically kind of highly repetitive type tasks. So your examples could be like payroll processing, customer onboarding, CRM updates, something that people have to do. Maybe there's some double keying, that you're doing just now into an existing system, or you periodically get information in from a third party, and you have to kind of reconcile that with a system that you've got. They're really good use cases for RPA. So, while those tasks are necessary for people to do, they're kind of taking up the valuable resources and employee time. So the idea is that you would look at RPA to try and automate those tasks to get some good operational and kind of cost efficiencies in your business, because you've then got something automated doing that job in a repetitive manner. You know how it's being done, and you're effectively freeing up that manual resource to go and work in something that's higher value or just a better benefit to your customers or to your bottom line, whatever matters to you. Okay, there's two different ways of running RPA as well. So we've got what's called attended RPA. So effectively this runs in the background, so the user is still active on the desktop. They're still doing their kind of day job. They're doing different bits and pieces. That has many benefits, because you're just allowing the process to run in the background. So you might have some parts where there's a wee bit of interaction required. So there's quite a lot of automation and there's a wee bit of interaction, and then the RPA flow can just start again and go and do the rest of the stuff. So you can kind of run that a wee bit more interactive. And then you've got unattended RPA, so no users logged into that, no users on the machine at all, and that can run 24/7 on a desktop without any active user sessions in place. So you could see if you had something that was kind of high volume or something that you wanted to process, there was quite a lot of processing to do, you could have that just sitting there, just working away in the background and running. So we've got a bit of a demo as to how that RPA works. It was quite complicated to just in terms of a demo to kind of set up a live demo for that. So what we've done is we've set up a live demo previously, and then we've just videoed that demo. So we're just going to show you the video. So the scenario here is that on the top, we've got the flow running, and on the bottom left, we've got an Excel spreadsheet, and then on the bottom right, we've got a kind of legacy invoicing application. And what you see is, obviously, you can see the flow just jumping up and down there as the video progresses. That's effectively going through each line in the Excel spreadsheet and looking to see if there's an equivalent line item in the invoicing system. If it finds any new entries, then you'll see that entering that into the system. So the first one you'll see is, you'll notice the new case being added into the invoicing system on the right hand side. The other thing it's then doing as well is, you'll notice some of the invoices in the spreadsheet, they're in GBP or they're in euros, but the invoicing system just takes US dollars. So you can see it's launched a browser window, it's doing that currency conversion, and then it's pasting in that currency conversion into the legacy invoicing system as well. And then it's setting the status for the invoicing system as well, so that it matches what's on the Excel spreadsheet. So you can see how quickly that can run through even just a small list of Excel invoices and match them together. It's quite powerful. You can see how if you had a much larger list, you could just kind of leave that running, and that maybe that's somebody's job is to go through and do that, and you could effectively take that away from them and automate that for them. Okay, just moving on to the next section then, the process advisor. So this is fairly new into Power Automate, and quite an interesting bit of technology. Really what this is doing for you is it will help you find opportunities that make sense to use Power Automate. Now, it works in conjunction with Power Automate Desktop as well. So if you've got people who are just carrying on with their usual tasks, they can start to use Power Automate Desktop to figure out how it could help them to automate some of the tasks that they would normally do. So what it does is it carries out kind of process mining, and it, as I say, it links up with Power Automate Desktop to record the kind of standard tasks. So there's five sections really for it, so 5 kind of main stages to it. So the first thing that you would do is you would set up a new process to help identify any opportunities for the improvement. So you would then invite colleagues or other people in your team or other areas of the business to record that task. So if you think maybe something like, using the previous example, invoice processing, you've said, right, I want to have a look at this invoice processing task because I think we could do it better. So you would go in and create a new process, and then you would invite other people in your team to say, we're going to review the invoice processing task. Those people would then record their session as well. So with Power Automate Desktop open, they would record their session, and they would be able to click through and do the activities they need to do. And what's happening behind the scenes is it'll record all those tasks. Once you've got all those recorded, you move on to the next stage, the edit stage. So you can go in and remove any sensitive information from those task recordings. So the kind of specifics of all those recordings, you can take away the kind of the values. So effectively saying I put a variable in here, I put a value into this system, but you don't need to know what that value is, because in the particular example I recorded, it was a customer's name, and I don't want the customer's name to be in there. So you can take that sensitive information out of the recordings. You then go through that step 4, which is the analyze. So then you're looking at a process map, and you're able to kind of generate the actions and the insights out of it that will help you then move on to kind of stage 5, which gives you the kind of guided recommendations for how to automate it in Power Automate, and how to set up a Power Automate flow to automate that. So we'll have a wee look at some of that just now. So we'll have a wee look at the Process Advisor. So we've got that within here. So within the Power Automate screen, we've got the Process Advisor here. We can go and create a new process, but we've got the list of processes here, and we can see that Thomas has previously created this kind of Contoso invoicing process. So if we click into here, we can see that we've got the ability to create a new recording for this process. We've got the analytics for the process. We can share it with other people so that they can do a recording themselves, or we can delete the process as well. And then what we've got is, similar to the flows, we've got the kind of description, who owns it, when it was created, what kind of status it's in, when it was modified, and when the recordings were analysed as well. And then who's that shared with? So we've got some co-owners in here, and then you could have some contributors to here as well. And then below here, we've got a list of the recordings with the dates and the times, and we can kind of click into a recording here, and we can see the actual detail of what has happened. So when Thomas did the recording here, he created a new record, and then he went into Excel, and then he went into the legacy invoicing application again, and then it was back in Excel and back towards it, and just going through the various different stages that carry out the task. So if we come back here, then what we can do is we can have a look at the analytics. And this takes a wee while just to load up. So just going away and having a look at the recordings that are made and pulling the data out of there. And then this will give you some stats about what the process that you're trying to record and what the process looks like. So again, you can see here that we've done 4 recordings. You can see that there was 2 different kind of variants between the process. So it followed the same line the majority of time, but there was two slight differences to it. You can see that it took 51 seconds was the average time to kind of carry out the process from start to finish. And then you can split on these so that you can see. So if you click on these, you'll filter the report to see, how many times did you add the contact. So this one, was really done as a bit of a demo to kind of show you the graphic and show you some of the parts in there. But you could see how, if you had a process that actually had, if the value is this, then I do this, or if the value is that, then I do something else. If those kind of rules that are in people's heads, if you like, are in the process, then you could see how the graphic would show the split of that, and you would see lots of different process variants, and that would start to give you an idea as to whether, is the process being followed like consistently all the time by everyone who's doing it, or do we have different people doing different things? And if we do have different people doing different things, then is that valid? Are they following the correct business rules? Or are they doing something else just because, over time and through learning, they think that's what they should be doing? So it can help you kind of just analyze the process and help just to kind of standardize it again. So the graphic is quite good, but so are the elements on the right-hand side here, just splitting down, being able to look at specific recordings as well and look at the time taken by different people when they recorded. So you can see here, we started the process, 100% came down this route. As more people record a session, then the lines will be thicker. So that shows you how many people came down the process line. So you can see we created a new record there. That took 9.75 seconds. And then we went down to add the name, and that took 5.5 seconds. And then went down and we added a contact, and that also took us 5.5 seconds. So split all the way down to the end of the process. And then what you can do is you can move on to the application, and you can see as you went through the process, how were people splitting up their use of the different applications within the process. So how long did they spend, for example, within Chrome to do the currency conversion? How long did they spend within Excel trying to figure out what invoice lines were there, and how long did they spend on the kind of legacy invoicing application as well? So you can see how that's a really useful tool to start to understand the processes and understand how you can look and break down and automate the correct bits of the process and standardize the right parts of the process. Okay, so moving on to Power Automate Desktop. So, building on top of the power of the kind of RPA and the Process Advisor, the Power Automate functionality is now in the desktop environment. And actually, you'll see when we come onto the licensing, it's actually free for users of Windows 10. So if you have Windows 10, you can just go and get Power Automate Desktop. So it has a visual designer, which makes it really easy for power users just to kind of drag and drop different aspects of it. It has both web and desktop recorders, so it lets you model any number of scenarios. So that might be, carrying out something, say, within Chrome or within IE, and recording that session and recording what you're doing, so that it can be replayed later on. And also doing that on the desktop as well. So if you've got any desktop applications, then you can also record those. And you can kind of mix and match those as well. So if you've got something that uses a desktop application, but then wants to move it out to a web-based system, then that's something you can do, and vice versa. It also allows you to implement kind of exception handling into the process as well. So you can say that, if something happens that's unexpected, then you want to be able to either flag to a person or try and take some automated recovery options to see, is it this thing? Is it this thing? If it's not, then go to a person and get some advice from the person. So I guess, why would you not just use the cloud flows? So why would you not just use the information that's there within Power Automate in the cloud? So, desktop flows can cover the tasks that cloud flows can't. So, for example, making full use of desktop and browser-based applications that don't have a connector, and also being able to run external actions, so run things like JavaScript functions and PowerShell scripts. The other thing that's good as well is that you can share flows. So if you've got a team of people and you're all carrying out the same task, if one person's automated that task, they can share that flow with other people in the team, and then everyone's got that task automated. I also mentioned the combination earlier as well. So, cloud flows and desktop flows, so they don't have to be separate. You can use them together. So you could start with a desktop flow, and then you could get that to trigger a cloud flow. So that it's actually, starting to use the connectors and starting to use some of the other aspects of what we saw earlier on in the cloud flows, the scheduled and the instant flows. And then you've also got pre-built actions. So there's support for kind of PDF, text, image file creation. There's Active Directory connections. There's support for Azure and AWS in there as well. So then moving on to the desktop the licensing. So the slide's actually titled Power Automate Desktop Licensing there, but this is the licensing across the majority of the Power Automate suite. So in terms of the Power Automate Cloud version, you have a per user plan, which allows an individual user to create unlimited cloud flows and also access to some of the premium connectors, because some of the connectors that are in the cloud version are premium connectors. So that allows one individual user to use, make as many flows as possible and make use of the premium connectors as well. And then you can layer on to that an attended RPA plan. So you've got the ability for a user to, create unlimited cloud flows and also automate any legacy applications by using that RPA, and also using a bit of AI as well. And then you've got a per flow plan. So if you've got high volume flows, then you can pay for it that way. So that's 5 flows a month, but that gives you reserved capacity. So you're able to run those flows at quite a high intensity in your organization. And then you've got Power Automate Desktop. So as I said, that's free for personal use with Windows 10. So as long as you get a Windows 10 license, then you can get a hold of that. And then you've got the Unattended RPA. So if you want to have effectively a bot, sitting there just running flows, then that's got an add-on license as well. So when it comes to licensing, it's always a bit of a kind of touchy topic in terms of how much you have to pay for these things. There are some, kind of ways of not working around the licensing, but effectively kind of working with the licensing, so that you can get flows running and being used by a number of people, but kind of making the best out of your kind of licensing commitment, if you like. And if that's something that you're interested in, then it's well worth a conversation with us, because we're doing that with other people. We're trying to help them kind of conserve what's done and be a bit smart about how they run some of these Power Automate scenarios, so that they don't end up with a large license bill. Okay, just looking at a case study then. So, we did a bit of work for Link Housing and their kind of commercial services aspect. What they were doing before was they receive applications from prospective homeowners across a variety of different schemes, such as Help to Buy, mid-market rent, etc. Those applications were being processed manually, so they were actually being, a form was filled out with all the attachments that was submitted and went to an email. A user was actually opening up that email, downloading all the attachments, making sure they had the right information, effectively creating a case for that application and moving that into a different area, and then having to delete all the information that they had held personally on their kind of desktop, and obviously making sure that they didn't make any mistakes in the process. So what we did was we picked up the part from the email coming in with all the attachments, and we designed and implemented that Power Automate solution that picks up that completed application, creates a case in SharePoint, so creates a document set in SharePoint, strips out all the relevant metadata and adds that into the document set, and then uploads all the relevant supporting documentation out of the email into the case, and marks it as ready for processing for somebody to be able to do that. So the result there is that they've got a cost-effective solution. They've got a vast reduction in manual effort, because they effectively had somebody sitting, doing this, processing these applications. They've got increased accuracy because it's being created in a consistent manner, and they've got some operational efficiency out of it because they've been able to, get those people who were doing that task onto the task further down the line, if you like, of actually processing that application. So speaking with the applicant, speaking with the solicitors and things like that, checking that the right information is in there, and moving on to the latter stages of the process, instead of being stuck in the first kind of manual moving the information about. Okay, so that kind of moves us on to the on to the end. I can see there's been a few questions in the chat, so I'm just going to have a wee look at some of the ones that are in the chat and see if we pick up. So we've got how would you roll something like this out at organisation? So I think the key things really for rolling this out are, by all means, go and kind of experiment with it a little bit. I think if you are planning to roll it out wider in the organisation, there are a few kind of key considerations. The one thing that we would say to you is really want to try and put some governance in place around this, and there are some really good strategies for being able to do that. There's some really good tools that help you just monitor, Power Automate flows that people are creating, so that you can see what they're doing and what connectors they're using. And there is also some good tools around the kind of data loss prevention side that let you limit what connectors people can connect to. So, as an example, kind of out of the box, if I was licensed, a user could go, connect to this SQL server, post that information out onto Facebook, for example. What you want to do is you want to be able to kind of limit that, say, like, we're happy for you to kind of be looking at these scenarios, but what we want you to be able to do is, get the information from SQL Server, but it's not a valid action to then, go and post that on Facebook. So you can start to split up these connectors and how they can be used. And as I say, you've also got the monitoring tools where you can monitor and say, right, I can see this flow is using this connector and this flow is carrying out these actions. This flow is running a lot. This flow doesn't have an appropriate owner, and things like that as well. So you can keep track of all that aspect on it. So I think if you were going to roll it out, I would say try and put some governance in place first, albeit if it's just light touch, that's ideal, and then build the governance as you kind of roll that out to other people as well. Okay, I think we had some questions around licensing. So yeah, if you've got Windows 10, then you've got Power Automate Desktop. You also have Power Automate if you have an E3 license and above, and you can do some Power Automate activities with that. The only thing that will limit you is the RPA scenario. You won't be able to do without any additional licensing, and also you won't be able to use any premium connectors unless you've paid for that kind of per app plan or per user plan. Okay, somebody's saying, could you take data out of one system and automate the keying of this into another system? So yeah, similar to that RPA solution that we showed there. That's the whole idea for the kind of RPA type scenario, is that you're able to take the data out of one system and drop it into the other system. So you don't need to have somebody kind of manually rekeying. And we're seeing some good scenarios around that through like ERP systems that maybe don't have good web APIs or don't have good kind of integration, and you can automate that and drop the information into there from what we would call more modern systems, if you like, for want of a better word. So I think that's probably me covered, I think, the majority of the questions in there. I just want to open it up and see if anyone wants to come off of mute and ask any questions, and happy to take any other questions.
Yeah, I mean, if there's anything later on that anybody wants to ask, we can, you can just message this contact email. On our contact page, we can answer any questions later on as well. I don't think there's anything coming through at the minute, so I don't know if that would just wrap it up there. Graham, is there anything else you want to?
I don't think so, no. Just obviously thanks for attending, and thanks for the questions. Hopefully you found it useful, and as I say, if you're looking to get started, if you're looking for any advice or whatever, then feel free to send that out. I believe Zopash will send out the slides and the recording of the session and she'll probably send out my details as well. So if there's anything at all, then feel free to ask the question.
Yeah, no, thank you very much for joining. Thanks, Graham, and thanks, Sammy, for answering the questions in the chat as well. So I've just noticed that Donald's asking about the download, so we'll be sending them up shortly. So in the next few days, we'll be getting you the slides and the recording as well, so you can catch up later. So thank you very much. Thanks for joining us. I hope to see you at a future event. Thank you. Thanks, bye. Bye.